The small exploration vessel EOS drifted silently through the cold void of space, its engines humming faintly as it approached the massive derelict ship. The crew aboard consisted of 4 individuals, each chosen for their unique skills and unwavering determination. Jacob, a tall man with calloused hands and a calm demeanor, was the engineer. He had spent most of his life fixing broken machines, and nothing seemed to faze him. Emily, the medic, was quieter but sharp-eyed, always ready to patch up wounds or offer a reassuring word. Ryan, the mission commander, carried himself with confidence, his steady voice often cutting through moments of doubt. And then there was Laura, the linguist, whose curiosity about alien cultures had driven her to learn dozens of languages, both human and extraterrestrial. For weeks, the crew had been traveling toward this mysterious object, a ship so ancient that no one knew who had built it or why it now floated abandoned at the edge of human-controlled space. It loomed before them now, an eerie silhouette against the endless blackness. Its design was unlike anything they had ever seen. Smooth curves blended seamlessly with jagged edges, as if the ship were part machine and part living organism. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its surface, pulsing in slow, rhythmic patterns. Ryan leaned forward in his seat on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen. "This is it," he said, his voice low but steady. "We're about to step into the unknown." Jacob cracked a small smile. "Just another day at the office," he joked, though his knuckles were white from gripping the armrests. Even someone as experienced as him couldn't help feeling uneasy. This wasn't just some old wreck. They were staring at something alien, something far beyond their understanding. Laura adjusted her glasses, her fingers trembling slightly as she studied the glowing symbols. "I've never seen markings like these," she admitted, "but they look intentional. Someone, or something, wants us to see them." Emily remained silent, her gaze flicking between the ship and her teammates. She didn't like the vibe coming off the derelict craft. There was something wrong here, something she couldn't quite put into words. Still, she nodded when Ryan gave the order to prepare for boarding. The docking process was smooth, almost too smooth. As the EOS connected to the alien ship, the crew suited up, checking their oxygen levels and communication devices one last time. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dark corridor stretching inward. The walls shimmered faintly, as though alive, and the floor felt soft underfoot, like stepping onto damp moss. A faint hum filled the air, vibrating gently against their skin. Jacob took point, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "No signs of damage," he muttered, running his gloved hand over the walls. "Whatever killed whoever was here, it didn't leave much behind." Laura followed closely, her tablet scanning the symbols etched into the walls. "These could be warnings," she said quietly. "Or maybe instructions. I'll need more time to figure it out." Ryan glanced back at Emily, who was checking her medical kit for the 3rd time. "Stay alert," he reminded everyone. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." As they moved deeper into the ship, the silence grew heavier, pressing down on them like a weight. Every step echoed unnaturally, and the temperature dropped steadily. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. For a brief moment, shadows danced across the walls, twisting into shapes that made Laura gasp and Jacob freeze mid-step. "Did you see that?" Laura whispered, her voice trembling. Jacob shook his head, forcing himself to laugh nervously. Probably just the power system failing. Old ships do weird things. But no one believed him. Not really. Something about this place felt alive. And whatever it wasn't happy to have visitors. Still, they pressed on, driven by curiosity and duty. Humanity had faced countless dangers before, and this crew wouldn't turn back now. Not when answers lay just ahead. As the crew moved deeper into the alien ship, the corridors seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied logic. The walls occasionally pulsed with a soft, faint glow, as if the ship itself were breathing. Jacob kept his flashlight steady, though its beam barely cut through the oppressive darkness. Laura walked beside him, her tablet scanning every symbol they passed, while Ryan stayed a few steps ahead, ensuring the path was clear. Emily brought up the rear, her eyes darting nervously between her teammates and the shadows around them. Suddenly, the hum in the air grew louder, almost like a low whisper. Then, without warning, a bright light flared in front of them. They all froze, shielding their eyes until the brightness dimmed. When they lowered their arms, they saw it, a translucent figure hovering in the center of the corridor. It shimmered and shifted, taking the shape of a humanoid form, but its features were indistinct, like ripples on water. "Who are you?" Ryan asked cautiously, his hand instinctively moving toward the weapon strapped to his side. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it tilted its head, studying them with an unreadable expression. Then, a voice filled their minds, not through their ears, but directly in their thoughts. "I am Kel," it said, the words calm but disjointed, as if spoken by someone struggling to form sentences. "This vessel belongs to the Vorthanians." Laura's eyes widened. "The Vorthanians. They're real." Kale hesitated before responding. "They were, long ago, masters of creation and destruction." The figure flickered momentarily, then continued. "Their time has ended. This ship drifts, broken, alone." Jacob frowned, stepping forward slightly. "If it's broken, why haven't you fixed it yourself? You're some kind of AI, right?" "I am. Incomplete," Kel replied. "My systems falter. I cannot repair what is lost." "But you..." The figure turned to face each of them in turn. "You are different. Humans. Your minds adapt. Your hands create. Only you can restore this vessel." Ryan exchanged a glance with his team. "Why us? Why not another species?" Kel's form wavered again, and for a moment, it seemed to struggle to maintain its presence. "Other species lack the spark, the will to overcome. You possess something unique, something the Vorthanians once valued above all else." Emily crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. "That sounds great and all, but repairing this ship doesn't sound easy. What happens if we fail?" Cal's response was unsettling. "Failure means stagnation, decay, perhaps your end." The figure paused, then added, "But success grants knowledge, power beyond imagining." Laura leaned closer to the hologram, her curiosity overpowering her fear. What kind of knowledge? What did the Vorthanians leave behind? Before Kel could answer, the lights in the corridor flickered violently, and the temperature dropped sharply. A low guttural sound echoed through the halls, sending shivers down their spines. The figure's form began to dissolve, breaking apart into fragments of light. "Warning," Kel's voice whispered urgently in their minds. "Danger stirs. Proceed with caution. Trust nothing but yourselves." And just like that, the hologram vanished, leaving the crew alone in the dimly lit corridor. The hum returned, quieter now but tinged with an ominous undertone. Ryan let out a slow breath. "Well, that was helpful." Jacob shook his head, muttering under his breath. "Yeah, real helpful. Trust nothing. Thanks for the tip." Laura adjusted her glasses, trying to process everything she just heard. He said the Vorthanians valued humans. Maybe there's more to learn about them deeper inside the ship. Emily looked at her skeptically. Or maybe there's a reason they're extinct. Ever think about that? Ryan stepped forward, his voice firm. "We don't have a choice. If this ship really holds technology that could change everything for humanity, we can't walk away. But we stay sharp. Whatever's lurking here, we deal with it together." With reluctant nods, the team pressed onward, their footsteps echoing softly against the strange, organic walls. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the ship itself were testing their resolve. Somewhere deep within its labyrinthine passages lay answers, and dangers they couldn't yet imagine. The deeper the crew ventured into the alien ship, the more it seemed to come alive around them. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that matched their footsteps. Strange symbols glowed brighter as they passed, almost like the ship was guiding them, or watching them. Jacob kept his flashlight trained ahead, its beam catching glimpses of odd shapes embedded in the walls, twisted metal forms that looked like sculptures, or perhaps tools. Laura stopped frequently to scan these artifacts with her tablet, her fingers flying over the screen. "This is incredible," she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "These symbols, they're not random. They're telling a story." "What kind of story?" Emily asked, her tone cautious. She still hadn't shaken the feeling that something was wrong, though she couldn't explain why. Laura hesitated before answering. "It's about the Vorthanians, their rise, and their fall." She pointed to one glowing panel. "This part shows their cities, huge structures floating in space. And this," she tapped another section. "This looks like some kind of war, or maybe an invasion." Jacob frowned, leaning closer to examine the panel. "You think they got wiped out by someone else, or did they do it to themselves?" Before Laura could respond, Ryan interrupted. "Focus, people. We need to figure out how to fix this ship, not get lost in history lessons." Laura nodded but couldn't hide her excitement. "Understanding their past might help us repair the ship. If we know what went wrong for them, we can avoid making the same mistakes." As they continued down the corridor, they stumbled upon a large chamber filled with holographic projections. The images floated in midair, depicting scenes from the Vorthanian civilization. There were bustling markets, towering spires of light, and vast fleets of ships exploring the stars. But then the images shifted, showing destruction. Entire planets consumed by fire, fleets shattered into debris, and shadowy figures attacking crowds of Vorthanians. "These must be the invaders Kale mentioned," Laura said quietly, pointing at the shadowy figures. "Or maybe it's whatever danger he warned us about." Jacob stepped closer to one projection, squinting at the details. "Look at this. These things, they don't look solid. More like energy, or parasites." Emily shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. "Parasites? You mean like something that infects you?" "Could be," Jacob replied grimly. "If it's strong enough to take down a species like the Vorthanians, we'd better watch our backs." Ryan moved toward the far side of the chamber, where a console stood against the wall. Unlike the rest of the ship, which felt organic, this device was sleek and metallic, covered in blinking lights and buttons. "This has to control something important," he said, running his hand over the surface. "Maybe it'll give us access to the core systems." Laura hurried over, her tablet already scanning the console. "Let me see if I can decode the interface. If we can understand how this works, we might find a way to start repairs." As she worked, the others kept watch, their eyes darting between the shadows and the glowing symbols on the walls. The hum in the air grew louder, almost like a heartbeat, and the temperature began to rise. Emily noticed sweat forming on her forehead and wiped it away nervously. "Do you feel that?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's getting hotter." Jacob nodded, gripping his flashlight tighter. "Yeah, and I don't think it's just the ship warming up. Something's coming." Before anyone could respond, the console let out a sharp beep. Laura gasped, stepping back as the screen lit up with a flurry of data. "I think I unlocked something," she said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear, "but I'm not sure what it does." The room suddenly darkened, and the holograms vanished, plunging them into near-total darkness. For a moment, all they could hear was the sound of their own breathing. And then, faintly, a low growl echoed through the chamber. Ryan raised his weapon, his voice steady despite the tension. "Stay close. Whatever's here, it knows we're onto something." The crew huddled together, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Somewhere in the distance, something moved, its presence heavy and menacing. They had uncovered the secrets of the Vorthanians, but now, those secrets seemed determined to remain buried. The growl echoed again, louder this time, reverberating through the chamber like a warning. The crew froze, their flashlights scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Jacob tightened his grip on his flashlight, using it like a weapon, while Ryan kept his gun raised, his eyes darting around the room. Emily stood close to Laura, her medical kit clutched tightly in her hands, as if it could somehow protect her. "Did you see that?" Laura whispered, pointing toward a shadow near the far wall. It had shifted, just slightly, but enough to make her heart race. "Probably nothing," Jacob muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. He didn't believe his own words, and neither did anyone else. The temperature continued to rise, making sweat trickle down their faces. The hum in the air grew louder, almost deafening now, and the walls began to pulse faster, as if the ship itself were reacting to something. Ryan took a cautious step forward, his boots barely making a sound on the soft floor. "We need to move," he said sharply. "Standing here isn't going to help us." Before they could act, the lights flickered violently, plunging the chamber into near-total darkness. When they came back on a moment later, the team found themselves surrounded by faint, glowing symbols etched into the walls, and something else. Shadows moved independently, twisting and writhing like living things. They stretched across the floor and ceiling, creeping closer with every passing second. "What is that?" Emily gasped, backing away until she bumped into Jacob. "I don't know," Jacob replied, his voice low. "But I don't think we want to find out." Laura stared at the shadows, her mind racing. "It's the entity Kale warned us about, the one that destroyed the Vorthanians." Ryan cursed under his breath, his jaw tightening. "If it's dangerous, we need to get out of here. Now." But before they could retreat, the shadows surged forward, forming a thick barrier that blocked their path. The growling grew louder, overlapping with whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Each member of the crew felt the weight of those whispers pressing into their minds, filling them with doubt and fear. Jacob heard his father's voice, scolding him for failing to fix an old engine years ago. "You're useless," it said, sharp and cruel, just like always. Emily felt the crushing guilt of losing a patient during her early days as a medic. The memory hit her like a wave, drowning her in shame. "You couldn't save them," the voice hissed. "How will you save yourself?" Laura saw flashes of her childhood, moments when she felt too small, too insignificant to matter. "You'll never be good enough," the voice taunted. "Why try?" Even Ryan wasn't spared. He relived the failure of a previous mission, where lives had been lost because of his decisions. "You led them to their deaths," the voice accused, "and you'll do it again." The whispers gnawed at their confidence, tearing apart their resolve piece by piece. For a moment, it felt impossible to fight back. But then Ryan clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. "This isn't real," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "It's trying to break us." His words snapped the others out of their daze. Jacob shook his head, muttering, "Not real. None of it's real." Emily took a deep breath, gripping her medical kit tighter. Laura wiped tears from her eyes, reminding herself that these were just tricks, illusions meant to weaken them. "We can't let it win," Ryan said firmly. "Stick together. Keep moving." With renewed determination, the crew pushed forward, ignoring the shadows and the voices. Jacob used his flashlight to carve a path through the darkness, while Ryan kept his weapon ready, aiming at anything that moved. Emily stayed close to Laura, who was still trembling but refused to give up. As they reached the edge of the chamber, the entity made one final attempt to stop them. The shadows coalesced into a massive, shapeless form that loomed over them, its red eyes glaring with malice. The growling turned into a roar, shaking the walls and floor. "Run," Ryan yelled, and the team bolted through the doorway, slamming it shut behind them. The roar faded as they collapsed against the door, breathing heavily. For now, they were safe, but they all knew the entity wasn't done with them yet. The team stumbled into a narrow corridor, their hearts pounding as they tried to catch their breath. The door behind them vibrated faintly, as if the entity were pressing against it, testing its strength. Jacob leaned against the wall, his flashlight beam trembling in his hand. "That thing isn't going to stay on the other side for long," he muttered. Ryan nodded, his face pale but resolute. "We need to find the core. If we can repair it, maybe we can shut that thing down, or at least weaken it." Laura glanced at her tablet, which still displayed fragments of data from the console they'd accessed earlier. "The core should be close," she said, pointing down the corridor. "These schematics show a central chamber just ahead." But she hesitated, her voice dropping. "It's surrounded by some kind of energy field. I don't know if we'll be able to get through." "We'll figure it out when we get there," Ryan said firmly. "Right now, standing here won't help us." The group moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly against the pulsing walls. The ship seemed alive around them, its organic surfaces shifting and glowing faintly. Every step felt heavier, as if the vessel itself were resisting their progress. Emily stayed near the back, her hands gripping her medical kit tightly. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting the shadows to spill into the corridor at any moment. When they reached the central chamber, they found themselves standing before a massive doorway, sealed with an intricate pattern of glowing symbols. In the center of the door was a circular panel, humming softly and radiating heat. Jacob stepped forward, examining it closely. "This must control the lock," he said, running his fingers over the surface. "But I've never seen anything like it." Laura joined him, her tablet scanning the panel. "It's similar to the symbols we saw earlier," she explained. "Maybe if I translate the sequence." Before she could finish, the ground beneath them shuddered violently. A low, guttural roar echoed through the corridor, shaking the walls. The door behind them buckled slightly, cracking under pressure. The entity was breaking through. "We don't have time," Ryan shouted. "Jacob, can you force it open?" Jacob hesitated, his mind racing. "I can try rerouting the power, but it'll take a minute. And it might not work." "Do it," Ryan ordered. He turned to Emily and Laura. "You two, stand guard. If that thing gets in here, we're done." Jacob dropped to his knees, pulling tools from his belt and prying open a small access panel beside the door. His hands worked quickly, connecting wires and adjusting circuits. The panel sparked once, then twice, and finally lit up with a steady glow. The symbols on the door began to shift, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. "It's working," Laura exclaimed, clutching her tablet. "Just a little more." But the entity wasn't about to let them succeed. With a deafening crash, the door behind them burst open, sending shards of metal flying. The shadowy mass surged into the corridor, its red eyes burning with fury. Ryan fired his weapon instinctively, the shots lighting up the darkness but doing little to slow the creature down. "Jacob, hurry," Emily screamed, backing the way as the entity advanced. "I'm almost there," Jacob shouted, sweat dripping from his brow. His fingers moved frantically, rewiring the last connection. Suddenly, the door hissed open, revealing the glowing core inside, a massive sphere of swirling energy suspended in midair. "Go," Ryan yelled, motioning for Laura and Emily to run inside. They obeyed without hesitation, disappearing into the chamber. Ryan fired another round at the entity, buying Jacob precious seconds. "I'm in," Jacob called, scrambling to his feet. He sprinted toward the doorway as Ryan followed, diving inside just as the entity lunged forward. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing the creature out, for now. The core pulsed brightly, bathing the chamber in warm light. Laura stared at it in awe. "This is it," she whispered. "If we can stabilize this, we can stop it." Jacob nodded, already examining the control panels surrounding the core. "But stabilizing it means channeling the energy back into the ship. If we mess up, the whole thing could explode." Ryan looked at each of them, his expression grim but determined. "Then we don't mess up. Let's do this." The chamber was eerily quiet except for the soft hum of the glowing core. Jacob knelt beside one of the control panels, his hands moving quickly as he worked to reroute the energy flow. Laura stood nearby, her tablet scanning the core's readings and relaying instructions. Emily hovered close, ready to assist, but unsure how to help. Ryan kept watch near the sealed door, his weapon drawn, and his eyes fixed on the faint cracks forming where the entity pounded relentlessly. "We don't have much time," Ryan said, glancing back at the others. The door shuddered with each impact, groaning under the force of the shadowy mass outside. "How's it coming?" "Almost there," Jacob replied, his voice tense. Beads of sweat rolled down his face as he adjusted wires and flipped switches. "But this thing is complicated. One wrong move, and we're all toast." Laura studied her tablet intently, pointing to a series of symbols flashing on the screen. "Try routing the energy through that node first," she suggested. "It should stabilize the core enough to contain the entity." Jacob nodded and followed her advice, his fingers trembling slightly as he connected the final wire. The core pulsed brighter, its swirling energy intensifying. For a moment, everything seemed to calm. The hum steadied. The walls stopped vibrating, and even the pounding on the door paused. "It's working," Laura exclaimed, relief washing over her face. "We're stabilizing it." But their victory was short-lived. With a deafening roar, the door burst open, sending shards of metal flying across the chamber. The entity surged inside, its shadowy form writhing like smoke caught in a storm. Its red eyes locked onto the core, and it lunged forward, determined to destroy it. "No!" Ryan shouted, firing his weapon at the creature. The shots did little more than slow it down, anchoring it further. It swiped at him with a tendril-like appendage, knocking him to the ground. Emily rushed to his side, helping him up. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm fine," Ryan grunted, grabbing his weapon again. "Keep it busy." Jacob turned back to the panel, panic rising in his chest. "I need more time," he yelled. "The core isn't stable yet." Laura grabbed his arm, her expression desperate. "What if we overload it? Could that trap the entity inside?" Jacob hesitated, his mind racing. "Maybe. But someone would have to manually channel the energy while the rest finish the process. And whoever does it." He trailed off, knowing what he meant without saying it aloud. "I'll do it," Jacob said firmly after a pause. Before anyone could argue, he stepped toward the core, pulling out a tool from his belt. "Just get the system online. I'll hold it here." "Jacob, no," Emily cried, tears welling in her eyes. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Jacob replied, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Trust me." Ryan clenched his jaw, nodding reluctantly. "Do it. We'll take care of the rest." Jacob positioned himself near the core, gripping the tool tightly. As he activated it, a surge of energy coursed through his body, making him grit his teeth against the pain. The core began to glow even brighter, its light pushing back against the encroaching shadows. The entity screamed, thrashing wildly as it tried to escape the growing intensity. "Hurry," Jacob shouted, his voice trained. His legs wobbled, and his vision blurred, but he held his ground. Laura and Emily worked together, frantically inputting commands into the panels surrounding the core. Ryan fired repeatedly at the entity, keeping it distracted long enough for them to finish. Finally, Laura hit the last button, and the core let out a blinding flash of light. The entity shrieked, its form dissolving into nothingness as the energy consumed it. The chamber shook violently, throwing everyone to the floor. When the light faded, the core stabilized, humming softly once more. Jacob collapsed, his body trembling from exhaustion. Emily rushed to his side, checking his pulse. "He's alive," she said, relief flooding her voice. Ryan helped Laura to her feet, both of them staring at the now peaceful core. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." Though battered and bruised, the team knew they had accomplished something extraordinary. The ship was safe, for now, and humanity had proven itself capable of overcoming even the greatest challenges. But as they looked around the chamber, The weight of Jacob's sacrifice hung heavy in the air. They had won, but not without cost. The crew sat in silence around Jacob, their faces pale and drawn. Emily had done what she could to stabilize him, but his body was weak from channeling the core's energy. He lay on the floor, breathing shallowly, his eyes half closed. Despite everything, a faint smile played on his lips. "You did good," Ryan said softly, kneeling beside him. "We couldn't have done this without you." Jacob chuckled weakly, wincing at the effort. "Just doing my job," he murmured. "Fixing broken things. One last time." Laura wiped tears from her eyes, clutching her tablet tightly. "You saved us all, Jacob. The ship's systems are stable now. The entity's gone." Emily stayed close, holding his hand. "You'll be okay," she said, though her voice cracked with doubt. "We'll get you back to the EOS and patch you up." Jacob shook his head slightly, his gaze distant. "Don't waste time on me," he whispered. "Finish the mission. Make it count." No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Finally, Ryan stood, his expression resolute. "We will," he promised, "for you and for everyone back home." With great care, they carried Jacob back to the docking bay, where the EOS waited patiently. Once aboard, Emily worked tirelessly to tend to his injuries, but they all knew the damage was severe. Jacob drifted in and out of consciousness, his strength fading with each passing hour. By the time they reached the edge of human-controlled space, he was gone. Back on Earth, news of their success spread quickly. The repaired alien ship became a symbol of humanity's ingenuity and resilience. Scientists pored over the Vorthanian database, unlocking secrets that would propel technology forward for generations. Laura spent months analyzing the data, her discoveries earning her recognition across the globe. Emily returned to her medical work, inspired by Jacob's bravery to push harder and help more people. And Ryan, though haunted by the loss of his friend, continued leading missions, determined to honor Jacob's sacrifice. One day, the crew gathered at a small memorial dedicated to Jacob. A plaque bore his name alongside a simple message. Asterisk, a man who gave everything to ensure humanity's future. Asterisk. As they stood there, reflecting on their journey, Laura broke the silence. "Do you think the Vorthanians would have been proud of us?" she asked quietly. Ryan nodded. "I think they would have seen a little of themselves in us. We didn't give up, no matter how hard it got." Emily smiled faintly. Jacob was right about one thing. We made it count. The legacy of their mission stretched far beyond the repaired ship or the knowledge they brought back. It reminded humanity of its potential, not just to survive, but to thrive. The Vorthanians may have fallen to their own mistakes, but humans had proven they could learn from the past and build a better future. As the sun set behind them, casting golden light over the memorial, the crew felt a quiet sense of pride. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, carrying with them not only the hopes of their species, but also the memory of a man who had given everything to make it possible. And somewhere, deep within the alien ship now resting safely in orbit, Kel watched silently, his presence calm and steady. Humanity had passed the test, and the universe awaited what they would do next.